They have discovered that there are enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid that go kilometers.
For decades, the Great Sphinx has stood as a riddle carved in stone, guarding secrets older than memory itself. Legends of hidden chambers and lost knowledge have circulated through the years. But now,
circa 10,000 BC, I am convinced that it is a ruin from pre-dynastic Egypt.
Egypt's famous archaeologist, Zahi Hawass, has chosen to reveal its secret. His words feel less like a discovery and more like a confession. Before his time runs out, Hawass insists he needs to tell the truth. Join us as we find out what's hidden beneath the Sphinx that many may not believe. The Sphinx and the shifting sands of time. For thousands of years, the Great Sphinx of Giza has watched over the desert, its weathered face staring across the sands as the pyramids rise behind it. People from every age have looked up at this massive figure and wondered what it truly meant, who built it, and why it was carved out of stone that once lay flat in the plateau. Even today, the origins of this monument still hold mystery, and the answers are pieced together through history, archaeology, and fragments of ancient writing. The earliest builders of Egypt left behind the Sphinx, but they did not leave us its name. Unlike the pyramids, which were carefully planned and completed, the Sphinx seems to have been left unfinished. Its temple, its enclosure, and even its body suggest a project that began with great ambition but never fully reached completion. Because of this, the cultural role of the Sphinx during the Old Kingdom is hard to pin down. It may not yet have had the sacred importance later generations gave it. Centuries passed, and by the time of the New Kingdom, the Sphinx had taken on a new life. It became linked to the sun, honored as Hor-em-Akhet, the Horus of the horizon. Pharaohs saw the Sphinx not just as a monument, but as a symbol of divine power resting on the edge of the desert. One ruler, Thutmose IV, left behind the famous Dream Stele, which tells of his vision at the foot of the Sphinx, showing how deeply this colossal statue had entered into royal imagination. The name we now use, Sphinx, was not Egyptian at all. It was added much later, during classical antiquity, more than 2,000 years after the statue was carved. The Greeks borrowed the term from their own mythology, where a strange hybrid creature carried the head of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of an eagle. Unlike that mythical being, the Great Sphinx of Egypt has no wings and wears the features of a man, but the name stayed and has followed the structure ever since. Archaeologists and geologists have long debated the age and origins of the Sphinx. Evidence points to the period between 2600 and 2500 BC, during the reign of Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid, or perhaps his son Khafra, who raised the second pyramid at Giza. The Sphinx was not built stone by stone like the pyramids. Instead, it was carved directly from the bedrock of the plateau. The same ground that gave birth to the figure also provided the blocks used to build nearby temples. One geologist, Farouk El-Baz, suggested that nature itself played a role in shaping its earliest form. He believed the head might have been carved first from a natural ridge of stone called a yardang, which Wines had already sculpted into a shape faintly resembling a figure. From there, workers cut deeper into the rock, digging a ditch around the shape and carving the rest of the body. The stone removed during this process was reused to build a temple before the Sphinx, though like the enclosure itself, the temple remained unfinished. To make way for the Sphinx and its temple, the builders had to dismantle parts of Khafra's Valley Temple. This detail shows that the funerary complex of Khafra already stood before the Sphinx was planned. The causeway connecting Khafra's pyramid and Valley Temple also proves older than the Sphinx's construction. Even the level of the base of the Sphinx temple makes clear it came after the Valley Temple, not before it. All of these details connect the monument strongly with Khafra's reign. The Dream Stele itself has played an important role in these debates. In the early 19th century, Thomas Young studied the inscriptions and thought he recognized the name Khafra within a broken cartouche. To make sense of it, he filled in the missing symbol Ara, completing the name. Decades later, when the stele was re-excavated in 1925, parts of the text had already flaked away and were lost forever. Later rulers, including Ramesses II, carried out their own efforts to clear sand from the Sphinx. The absence of a strong cult surrounding the Sphinx during the Old Kingdom suggests that its religious role had not yet fully developed. By the New Kingdom, the Sphinx had become firmly tied to the worship of the sun. It was seen as the face of Hor-em-Akhet, the horizon god. Nearly 1,000 years after the Sphinx was carved, Pharaoh Amenhotep II built a temple northeast of the statue, dedicating it to the cult of this solar deity. Looking at the Sphinx today, its face worn by time and its body restored in many stages, it is easy to see both its grandeur and its mystery. It was cut from living rock, left incomplete, reshaped by kings, and renamed by cultures that followed. Each era placed new meaning upon it. The Old Kingdom may have left the Sphinx without a clear role, but later generations brought it into their own world, making it both a guardian of the desert and a symbol of kinship. Now, let's move to a more interesting aspect of this monument: the journey through change. During the time of the Greeks and Romans, the land of Giza had already turned into a place that drew visitors from far and wide. What had once been the sacred heart of ancient Egypt became known as an old wonder that people wanted to look at, study, or even use for their own purposes. Roman emperors themselves made their way to the desert to see the Sphinx, partly out of curiosity, but also because standing near such a monument gave them a sense of power and connection to Egypt's long history. In the 1st century AD, efforts were made to dig away the sand that had covered the Sphinx once more. This was done in honor of Emperor Nero and the governor of Egypt at that time, Tiberius Claudius Balbulus. To make the approach grander, workers built a huge stairway more than 12 meters wide. It led down to a paved floor directly in front of the paws of the monument. At the top of these steps stood a podium where people could look down into the sanctuary of the Sphinx. Another raised area stood behind it with more steps, giving different levels for viewing. Centuries later, in the 1930s, the French archaeologist Émile Barrès pulled down the stairway during his large excavation work. Over the years, treasure seekers and robbers dug into the body of the Sphinx, hacking out shafts and passages that led nowhere, leaving scars and holes inside the monument. Interestingly, not everyone who saw the Sphinx in ancient times believed it was tied to the pharaohs. Some foreign groups connected it with other gods. There were those who thought it showed the likeness of the god Hauran. In later centuries, even after the fall of the old empires, stories about the Sphinx did not fade. During medieval times, different peoples gave it new meaning. The Sabians of Haran claimed it was the burial place of the wise Hermes Trismegistus. Arab writers painted another picture. To them, the Sphinx stood as a magical protector, keeping the desert from swallowing the land. One account spoke of it as the talisman of the Nile, a figure upon which people believed the rising and falling of the great river depended. Some even wrote that men hoping for government positions in Egypt brought incense as offerings before the statue, hoping their wishes would be answered. Through all the centuries, visitors, whether pilgrims, scholars, or simple travelers, kept writing down what they saw and felt. Their words often mixed facts with imagination, weaving together science with myth. The material that formed the Sphinx also played a role in how it changed over time. The limestone of the Giza Plateau came in layers, some strong, others soft. The lowest parts, such as the legs, were cut from solid and sturdy rock, so they endured. The middle body, however, had been carved from softer stone, and this wore away more quickly under wind and sand. The head was shaped from a tougher layer, which helped it keep its form better than the rest. One of the longest-running mysteries around the statue is the fate of its missing nose. Many stories have been told, the most popular being that Napoleon's soldiers shot it away with cannon fire. But this tale does not hold up. Long before Napoleon set foot in Egypt, drawings from the year 1737 by Frederick Louis Norden already showed the nose gone. When experts studied the face, they saw clear marks left by chisels or rods that had been forced into the stone, one at the bridge of the nose, another below a nostril. The nose must have been pried loose with tools and brought crashing down, breaking into pieces that either fell apart or were later destroyed. Different sources from Arab writers gave other versions. Some thought the nose had been ruined by religious attacks on images. Others blamed the Mamluks in the 14th century. A particular account told of Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar, a Sufi mystic who, in the year 1378, saw peasants leaving gifts at the Sphinx for a good harvest. Angered by what he saw as idol worship, he struck at the face of the monument and damaged it. Later tales claimed the spreading sand across Giza was a punishment for this act. Still others linked later disasters in Egypt to the same moment of destruction. As though the loss of the Sphinx's nose had brought curses upon the land, the figure may once have looked even more elaborate. Some evidence suggests that a ceremonial beard had been attached to the chin at some point, perhaps after the original carving. If it had been part of the earliest design, then breaking away would likely have damaged the chin severely. Pieces of this beard have been found, hinting at how it might have appeared. The Sphinx, far from being a plain stone giant, once stood in bright colors. Traces of red remain on the face, with hints of yellow and blue found on other parts. Scholars like Mark Lehner have suggested that it was once painted in bold, almost startling tones, far different from the sandy shade we know today. Records from the Roman era, such as those by Pliny the Elder, describe the face of the statue painted in red and include detailed notes about its size. Bit by bit, as centuries passed, people pulled stories out of the Sphinx and added their own. It became not just a statue, but a canvas of rumors and beliefs. But when was it built, and by who? The mystery of the Sphinx's origins. When explorers and scholars first tried to explain the Sphinx and its temples, they often argued with one another about its true age. Some believed it belonged to one era, while others placed it in a completely different time. Their notes and reports show how hard it was to agree on what they were looking at. In the middle of the 19th century, a discovery stirred debate even further. Auguste Mariette, the Frenchman who founded the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, dug up an inscribed slab now called the Inventory Stela. It came from the 26th dynasty, centuries later than the Old Kingdom. The carving on it described Pharaoh Khufu finding the Sphinx already buried under deep layers of sand. For many, this seemed like a clear clue that the Sphinx had been there long before Khufu's reign. But the story did not match the real evidence on the ground. Archaeologists later realized it was not an accurate record of history, but a crafted version of the past. Local priests had shaped this tale to give their temple of Isis a long and grand history that it never truly had. These kinds of inventions were common during that period, when religious centers competed with one another for attention, offerings, and power. A few decades later, in 1883, another scholar, Flinders Petrie, wrote about the temples beside the Sphinx. He pointed out that many people were sure the temple was older than the 4th dynasty, but new finds convinced him it actually belonged to Khafra's time. This tied the Sphinx more closely to Khafre, the builder of the second pyramid at Giza. Soon after, Gaston Maspero, a French expert who took charge of the Egyptian Museum, carried out his own survey. He believed the Sphinx was older than Khafra himself, but thought Khafra had been the one to dig it out from the sand. For him, the monument was one of the oldest works of stone in the land, standing long before many others. Others gave different ideas. Ludwig Borchardt thought the Sphinx was shaped much later, during the Middle Kingdom. He pointed to its face and features, which reminded him of Amenemhat III of the 12th dynasty. E.A. Wallace Budge, who studied Egyptian religion and wrote books on the subject, also argued that the monument had already stood in Khafra's days, which meant it had to be much older. Another scholar, Salim Hassan, suggested it was built only after Khafra's pyramid complex had been finished. Each idea pulled the story in a new direction, and none could fully settle the matter. More recently, modern experts have brought new theories to the discussion. Rainer Stadelmann, who once directed the German Archaeological Institute in Cairo, studied the headcloth and the now missing beard of the Sphinx. To him, their style matched more closely with Khufu, father of Khafra and builder of the Great Pyramid. He argued that Khafra's causeway seemed to have been built around an already standing structure, which could only have been the Sphinx. In 2004, another researcher, Vasil Dobrev, offered a different view. He claimed that Khufu's son, Djedefre, may have created the Sphinx. According to him, Djedefre wanted to honor his father and link him with the sun god Ra, lifting up the dynasty's image. If correct, this would mean the Sphinx was a monument built for family and divine respect. He also believed the path leading from Khafra's pyramid to the temples bent around the Sphinx, proving it already existed by then. Not everyone agreed with this. Some experts said Dobrev's idea was not impossible, but they wanted more proof before changing their minds. Beyond the arguments about kings and dynasties, geologists also stepped in. Colin Reeder studied the stone walls of the Sphinx enclosure and noticed marks of heavy water flow. He believed the erosion had been shaped by rainwater long before the quarries of the Giza Plateau were cut. To him, this suggested the monument was already standing before quarrying began, and therefore before the pyramids themselves. He looked at the huge blocks in the Sphinx temple and at the way the causeways and pyramid alignments seemed to bend around something older. This gave weight to the idea that the Sphinx had been there first, and builders had worked around it. Reader explained that the erosion could have taken shape within a shorter period than many thought, and he placed the Sphinx in the late pre-dynastic or early dynastic age. This was still a time when Egyptians already knew how to cut stone and raise large works. What comes out of all these theories is a picture of endless debate. Each expert picked up clues, weighed them, and set down conclusions. But the evidence did not always agree. Some leaned on texts and carvings, others on style of art, and others still on the marks left by nature itself. The Sphinx seemed to play tricks on those who studied it, offering parts of its story, but never all of it. The image of this lion-bodied, human-headed figure standing at the edge of the desert has always carried a strong pull. It connects with questions about power, time, and belief. No matter who shaped it first, whether Khufu, Khafre, or Djedefre, or whether it stood even before the pyramids, its presence gave later people reason to build, to write, and to contemplate. Temples grew beside it, stories wrapped around it, and priests used it to draw in followers and gifts. Even now, as modern tools measure and scan its surfaces, the debate continues. The Sphinx has endured more than 4,000 years of shifting sands and shifting opinions. Scholars dig up fragments, compare details, and put forward new answers, but the riddle remains. This structure has outlived kings, eras, and entire civilizations, and it continues to shape the imagination of those who stand before it. But what is more fascinating is the discovery made by Dr. Zahi Hawass on the Sphinx. Under the Sphinx. For centuries, people have stared at the Great Sphinx of Giza and wondered what might be hidden inside or beneath it. The giant statue has always evoked mystery. Ancient legends spoke of hidden chambers, secret rooms, or even entire lost cities buried under its paws. Over time, explorers, writers, and dreamers built stories about hidden archives, treasures, or libraries sealed away by the builders of Egypt's pyramids. These ideas grew so popular that many believed the Sphinx was not just a monument, but a door to something far greater. No figure has spent more time facing these claims than Dr. Zahi Hawass, Egypt's most famous archaeologist and former minister of antiquities. For decades, he has studied the Sphinx and led major excavations around it. He has opened tunnels, measured fissures, and carried out drilling and surveys to test all the wild rumors. While the stories are exciting, Hawass insists that what lies beneath the Sphinx is far less magical, but no less fascinating. He explains that there are indeed tunnels and passages inside and around the Sphinx. They are real, not myths, but they do not lead to a hidden world. They are small, narrow shafts, some cut by ancient builders, and others dug by later explorers. One of the most famous is a tunnel at the back of the statue's head. It was discovered in the 19th century by an engineer named Perring. He dug into the stone, hoping to strike treasure, but the tunnel ended in solid rock. Today it remains a short, empty passage, a scar left by human curiosity. Another tunnel lies beneath the tail. Hawass explored it himself. It stretches for a short distance but then stops, blocked by bedrock. There is also a passage under the chest, close to the famous dream stele, placed there by Pharaoh Thutmose IV. In this area, Hawass confirms, a tunnel exists, but it too does not lead to anything grand. It ends without opening into larger spaces. For him, these small tunnels are fascinating traces of human activity, but not proof of hidden treasure. On the northern side of the Sphinx enclosure, near the back paw, there is a feature often overlooked by casual visitors. It is a square shaft set into the stone ledge, directly opposite the hind paw. In 1978, during a round of excavations, Hawass cleared it out and took detailed measurements. The opening is not very large, about 1.4 meters long by 1.1 meters wide, which is like 4.7 by 3.5 feet. It descends to a depth of about 2 meters, or around 6.6 feet. The American Egyptologist Mark Lehner later studied this shaft and suggested it might have been started as a small burial place, but left incomplete. He gave it a name that caught attention: the keyhole shaft. This was because the cuttings in the stone ledge just above it resembled the lower part of an old-fashioned keyhole turned upside down. In addition to these man-made cuts, the Sphinx contains natural features. The limestone bedrock is full of fissures and cracks that can look like doorways or hidden shafts when seen from outside. Over centuries, myths grew around them, but when scientists investigated, they found only natural formations. Some of these cracks were later enlarged, perhaps in ancient attempts to stabilize the structure or explore inside it. To settle the matter, modern studies have gone further. Drilling and imaging technology have been used to look under the Sphinx. Hawass explains that cores were taken to measure the rock and test for voids. Ground-penetrating studies also examined the layers beneath. What they revealed was solid limestone bedrock. There were no great hollow spaces, no massive chambers waiting to be opened. Water was found in parts of the plateau, but no signs of secret rooms. This conclusion is important because many books and documentaries still claim that the Sphinx hides a hall of records or a lost city sealed below. These stories became popular in the 20th century and remain powerful in the imagination of many. But Hawass firmly rejects them. In his view, there is no scientific evidence for such hidden wonders. The Sphinx is incredible in its own right, a colossal monument cut from living stone, not a doorway to an underground world. Still, he does not dismiss the fascination people feel. He understands that the mystery of the Sphinx will always draw attention. The small tunnels, the ancient cut, and the scars of old explorers give the impression of something waiting to be uncovered. They feed the dream that perhaps something more lies waiting to be found. Yet for Hawass, the truth is that the statue stands as it is, carved from one giant block of rock, solid and massive, resting firmly on the Giza Plateau. What makes the Sphinx even more powerful is not hidden chambers, but its survival. Over thousands of years, it has faced winds, sands, and floods. It has been buried up to its neck in sand, only to be dug out again. Pharaohs, travelers, and emperors from Rome to modern times have marveled at it. And today, when people ask Hawass what is inside, he points to the work already done, the tunnels already explored, and the scans already completed. They show that while the Sphinx has mysteries, they are not the kind that involve treasure rooms or lost archives. The real mystery is how ancient builders created it, why they chose this shape, and what purpose it served in their world. Was it a guardian for the pyramids, a divine image of a king, or something deeper, tied to beliefs that shaped the dawn of Egyptian civilization? These are the questions that still drive research, and they are mysteries no exploration of the stone can fully answer. What remains is the Sphinx itself, staring east toward the rising sun, carrying its secrets not underground, but in its very presence. Myths surrounding the Great Sphinx. For centuries, people have tried to work out the real story of the Great Sphinx of Giza. Many different ideas have been brought forward, each one trying to explain how it was made, what it was meant to be, or who it was meant to represent. Yet most of these ideas do not stand up to evidence. When researchers check them against archaeology, history, or science, they fall apart. Because of this, many of these theories are treated as false history, or what is now called pseudo-archaeology. What we do know from ancient Egyptian belief is that the Sphinx was placed with a very specific purpose. It was set to face the east, toward the rising sun, in line with the Egyptian solar cult that honored the sun god. To them, the rising sun meant renewal and power, so the position of the Sphinx was not by chance. This part of its design matches what is known about their religious ideas. Other ideas, however, try to push the story much further back. One of the most famous is the Orion correlation theory. This view suggests that the Sphinx was not built in the time of the pharaohs we usually connect it with, but much earlier. According to this, the Sphinx was placed to line up with the constellation Leo during the spring equinox, around 10,500 BC. The theory paints a picture of builders from a lost age, setting it up to match the stars. But when experts went through records, carvings, and layers of soil, they found nothing that supports it. Because no proof was ever dug up, this theory is also put aside as false. Another bold idea came up with the Sphinx water erosion hypothesis. Those who backed it looked at the deep grooves and marks on the enclosure walls around the statue. They argued that the marks could not have been caused by wind or sand, but by heavy rainfall that lasted for many years. If that were true, the Sphinx would have to be far older than the time of Pharaoh Khafra, who is usually linked with it. Thinkers like René Schwaller de Lubitsch, John Anthony West, and geologist Robert Schoch pushed this claim forward. Yet experts in climate, geology, and history joined together to check the fact. They showed that the rainfall needed to make such marks did not match the time or place. Sand, wind, and other natural wear could explain the shapes instead. In the end, this view also broke down under study and was placed in the same group of fringe ideas. Speculation about hidden chambers has also followed the Sphinx through the years. H. Spencer Lewis once spoke of secret rooms under the massive statue. Later, in the 1930s, the psychic Edgar Cayce gave a very bold prediction. He said that under the Sphinx, a hall of records from Atlantis would be found, filled with ancient knowledge, and that it would come to light in 1998. When the year came and passed, no hall was found. Still, his claim set off a wave of excitement in the 1990s, with people digging into the mystery, hoping to bring something out of the ground. But like so many other ideas, this one also faded when nothing was uncovered. In the late 20th century, writer Robert K.G. Temple brought up yet another suggestion. He argued that the Sphinx was never meant to be a lion at all. Instead, he believed it was first built as a statue of the jackal god Anubis, the god of funerals and the afterlife. According to him, the face was later reshaped into the likeness of a Middle Kingdom ruler, Amenemhet II. He based this idea on the details of the eye makeup and the pleats in the headdress. Still, like the others, this claim did not hold strong enough to convince most scholars. Older studies also reveal how much views of the Sphinx have shifted with time. Until the early 20th century, some argued that the face had what they called Negroid features. These claims were shaped by the race theories of that period, which are now rejected as outdated and unscientific. Modern research has moved past such ideas, focusing instead on the historical and cultural meaning of the statue. Through all of this, the Sphinx has drawn out both serious study and speculation, pushing researchers to look back, dig deeper, and try to bring out the truth hidden in its long history. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.